If you're looking for more muscle size, more muscle strength, and increased fatigue resistibility and stamina in your muscles, then you should be incorporating some sort of training to failure in your exercise program. And it's a strategy that we use to really great effect with our range of motion individualized programming clients. So here are the top 3 reasons that you should be training to failure as part of your program. Now, what does training to failure mean? It basically means that you continue contracting your muscles, you continue with your reps until you reach what we call technical failure. This is the point where your technique starts to fall away. Please note, you don't continue training after this point. You don't complete more repetitions once your technique starts to fall apart. It's going to lead to injury, and it's actually going to minimize the impact and the effect of this training to failure. So our first big reason that training to failure is a great strategy. To understand this, you need to understand how your motor units work. A motor unit is basically the nerve that leaves your brain and tells your muscles to turn on. Your motor units, that nerve and that muscle fiber that you're turning on and contracting, it can either be turned on or it can be turned off. It can't be half turned on. So let's say that you pick up a moderate to light load. Maybe it takes 50% of your muscle fibers to be contracting to be able to lift that load. If you were to lift a slightly heavier load, maybe you need 60% of your fibers on. Now, you don't turn on all of your fibers at 60%, you turn on 60% of your fibers at 100%. So what happens when you go to failure and you complete more and more repetitions until you can't do them anymore with good technique is you are fatiguing a higher percentage of those motor units. That is a higher percentage of the nerves that tell the muscle fibers to work. So if you can push to failure, instead of stopping at maybe a 7 out of 10 level of fatigue, you're able to fatigue a higher level of these motor units and therefore create more of a stimulus and more of an effect. The second reason to train to failure is that it's a very efficient, a very time-efficient way to create a lot of stimulus, a lot of adaptation in your body in a short amount of time. This is because when you train to failure, you can't actually do as many reps as if you were breaking things up into multiple sets. So imagine that you were doing multiple smaller sets of an exercise like a bench press, for example. At the end of that session, you'll have done a decent amount of volume. You'll have done a lot of work. Whereas if you're going to failure, you won't be able to do as many sets, as many repetitions, because you will hit that point of failure. So you can still get all of that motor unit fatigue and activation that we talked about, but you'll be able to do it in a very small amount of time. And at the end of a session, when you look back over how many repetitions you've done, the feeling that you have in your muscles and in your body will exceed how much work it looks like you've done. So you'll look at the whiteboard at the end of a session. It won't seem like you've done much work, but you'll definitely feel like you've done a lot of work. And it's the feel, it's that stimulus that leads to all of the adaptations. And speaking of those adaptations, our third reason to try training to failure is because it increases the fatigue resistibility of your muscles. What does this mean? When you train and do higher repetitions, and again, push close to that point of failure, it creates some changes at a muscular level. It increases the number of capillaries, which take nutrients, fuel to your muscles and remove the waste products from the muscles. So it increases the number of capillaries around those muscles. It changes the amount of mitochondria in the muscle cells. Those are the little energy systems or engines that live inside your muscle cells, and will actually increase the number of those that you have. And there are various other chemical changes that we can see as well, which make it a very effective way to not only increase the amount of muscle you have, the amount of strength you have, but in this case, the amount of stamina you have. It increases the number of those slower twitch muscle fibers to ensure that you're able to keep contracting for extended periods of time. So if you are not training to failure, you're not going to be turning on as many of these motor units as possible. You aren't going to be training as efficiently as you can, and you're not going to be increasing the fatigue resistibility of your muscles. Now, this is not the only way to train. You should not exclusively train to failure, but if it's a strategy that you're not currently implementing in your training, it's a strategy that's worth trying. If you'd like to learn about some sessions that we implement, some of our favorite sessions that we implement with our range of motion individualized programming clients, you can check out our most recent blog on the Range of Motion website, where we talk about some of these benefits and examples of training to failure. You can find our website, rangeofmotion.net.au, and to learn more about Range of Motion individualized programming, which is online individualized programming that we work closely one-on-one with our clients, rangeofmotion.net.au/ROMIP.